What's up, everybody? I'm Freddie Prinze Jr. Thanks for tuning into GEGGHEAD, and thank you for tuning into GEGG TALK, the show where I give you two topics, here and there, and I show you how they're connected, because art inspires art, and that's what I love most about it.
Good evening and good game. You're now tuned in to JLB and FBJ. Let the good times roll. Welcome to the web show.
Ghost of Tsushima. You guys, I am in love with this game. You may be asking yourself right now, am I seriously going to buy a game on the PS4 when the PS5 is about to come out? No. However, if you have one, I'm never going to make you waste money, but if you have one and you haven't played this game yet, you are missing out. It is not a button masher. If you're an older gamer like me, if you're in your 40s and you hate having to remember all those combinations, you don't. There's no triangle, square, circle, L1, R1 to do a combination. You know what your moves are. They're easy. If you are a button masher, mash away. Put it on easy mode and annihilate all of the Mongolians invading your prideful and traditionally bound country. But if you're an older dude like me and you're looking for a story-driven game that's not going to drive you insane and full of glitches, this is the one for you. And let me tell you why. There was a director a long time ago, he passed away in the 90s, named Akira Kurosawa. And if you don't know who this man is, then you don't know who the inspiration for many of the filmmakers that you've loved over the years today. He has inspired George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and everyone in between. In fact, one of his movies, The Hidden Fortress, is literally the inspiration for Jedi and Sith being very sort of samurai and ninja, Japanese culture. And it wasn't until Akira sort of broke away from the studio and started making his own films that we really got to see their influence. This is a man, and this is factual. He would storyboard, meaning draw out every scene and what it would look like. But Akira was a trained painter, so he would paint out the scenes, sketch, then paint them. And his films look exactly like the paintings. This is near impossible to do. James Wan, the great horror film director, storyboards everything. He rarely uses it because of all the problems that occur on a film. But back in the day, Akira wasn't having to deal with that. So he could literally use his painter's mind to direct a film. And the movies he made inspired filmmakers everywhere. Star Wars is just the beginning. Now, we're not going to get into a John Ford biography, but John Ford, who worked with John Wayne in the 30s forever, he made over probably 20 movies with him, was the inspiration for Akira. Now, back to Ghost of Tsushima. Now, you can play full Akira Kurosawa mode if you'd like, which is black and white. Oh, it's so beautiful. With Japanese voice actors doing all the roles beautifully and English subtitles. This is the way I recommend for you to play it. Some of you are going to reject black and white just on principle because you were born in a time when it didn't even exist and it wasn't a format that got used anymore. If that's the case, that's totally fine. Play it in full, brilliant, beautiful color and watch as your horse gallops through fields of flowers, through the snow. You get different seasons. You see rain. You can ride on the beach and you can duel the way a samurai duels. This is where we get into a lot of that inspiration. They shoot these the same way Akira did, or a director that was inspired by another one, Kenji Misumi, not Toshiro Mifune. That was Akira Kurosawa's John Wayne. He was always the samurai. He was the lead in all those films, and he was great. I don't know how many they made, but I'm gonna throw out a number, 16, and you can let me know if I'm right. If you watched on Up Up Down Down's YouTube channel, they do a tabletop role-playing game called Roll Out, and I hosted last season. And I'm obsessed with Japanese culture. And one of the main characters, the NPCs that I created, was Kenji. And it was in honor to this director, who made another series that is very Star Wars connected that we're going to get into in a second. Now, back to dueling. It is music driven. It is character driven. It is story driven. It is not gimmicks, blood, or gore driven. It's very cinematic. Every time you have a duel, not a standoff, which is a different thing. That's where you challenge multiple foes and you can take them down with a single strike, like the Seven Samurai did. Or if you want to see more art-inspiring art, what was the American version of the Seven Samurai? The Magnificent Seven. It's the same movie, but back to duels. Very cinematic, very beautiful. You just sit back and watch. Your enemy brandishes their blade. Shing. You have your hand, because you're a samurai, you're playing it cool. You just have a thumb on the edge of it and just click. And the music's always different on every duel, and it's always in sync to the swords coming out. It's beautifully done. And then you start a very free-flowing 360-degree duel where you're dodging, parrying, being offensive and attacking, being defensive, blocking, healing yourself if need be, using certain gadgets that remain true to the time period if you need them as well. You can be very creative with the way you defeat enemies. You also have 4 multiple stances. If you're facing an enemy with a long-range weapon, or they would call a polearm weapon, like a spear or a naginata, which is an awesome spear with a blade on the end. So cool. You have a technique for that. If it's a shield and sword, technique for that. If it's just a regular sword, there's a technique for that. If it's a powerful hulking enemy, there's a technique for that. And it's all with the simple click of one button. This is for you old gamers out there. They have simplified and streamlined the game. This is a movie that you get to be a part of. If you enjoyed being Peter Parker in the Spider-Man game for PS4, you will love this. If you loved being Arthur in Red Dead Redemption 2, you will love this. You will fall in love with your horse the same way Arthur fell in love with his horse. I love everything about this game. There'll be a couple parts where maybe you're on a slick rock that you can't jump up. You might find yourself stuck, but we're not going to focus on that. It literally has happened to me twice during the whole game. It's watching ancient, it's the 70s, so nowadays it's ancient Japanese cinema. I love this game. I can't recommend it enough. If we did a rating system, I would give it as high a rating as we can, but I don't do that because I think that's weird. Because it would be very, very subjective. Now, moving on to inspirations. We're going to talk about Kenji Misumi, and we're going to talk about a series that he directed almost every film in called Lone Wolf and Cub. And this is the sort of international Japanese film. When these directors' movies really sort of jumped out, like Akira's first movie on his own was called, I think, Drunken Angel, and you saw what he could do when his studio wasn't holding him down. Well, this next generation of Japanese actors also inspired a lot of Star Wars cinema, and Kenji created a series called Lone Wolf and Cub. And there are references to this as well. There's also references to Zatoichi, which was also one of Kenji's films as well, which is The Blind Swordsman, the American version, which was terrible, but you should watch it anyway, starring Rutger Hauer, and it's titled Blind Fury. It's not a good movie, but you should still see where some of the inspirations come from if this is something you dig. Now, back to Kenji. I prefer his movies to Akira Kurosawa's, and I know that's blasphemous, but I just do. I didn't have a dad and growing up, and neither does the cub in Lone Wolf and Cub. And the Lone Wolf is this sort of masterless samurai, like a Ronin samurai. Now, the difference between a Ronin and a samurai is basically purpose, right? If you're a samurai, there's a shogun or a lord that you protected and you were loyal to. If you're Ronin, you're masterless. You were basically mercenaries looking for work and presumed more selfish and less disciplined than your normal everyday samurai, or even your low-scale samurai. The discipline level and the loyalty was always there. With the Ronin, not so much. It was a money job. So this movie, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you, we find this sort of masterless samurai who finds himself charged with taking care of this young infant baby. And he puts this child on his back. And the beauty is when he battles other samurai, other people around the region, people, whether, I'm not going to give away their motives, but he never allows an enemy behind him. He keeps all the enemies in front and the baby stays safely on his back. Does this remind you of a particular battle droid? Oh, wait, let me rephrase. Nurse droid that you may have seen in a little show called The Mandalorian? Because if so, you are dead on. And I won't speak for Jon Favreau because I don't know him very well, but I know Dave Filoni incredibly well. Dave Filoni, who was the co-creator of The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau, and we've spoken about Japanese cinema for the last 6 years, and Lone Wolf and Cub is The Mandalorian. Just the same way that The Hidden Fortress is Star Wars. The same way that Akira and Tifune were John Ford and John Wayne. And in fact, he even said, "This is my John Wayne." He gave John Ford credit. We're speaking of Kurosawa now. So all these things, all this art is connected. And as the show continues, as the show goes on, we're going to show you a series of topics. It'll always be a top one and a bottom one. And the line will always, always, always connect the two. Because as American or Western artists inspire Eastern or Japanese artists, it goes vice versa as well. And now with video games, you can start to see where when I was growing up, video games were stealing, not in a bad way, in an inspirational way. Video games would steal from movies and from television. Over the last 10 to 12 years, you've really seen a lot of movies and TV steal from video games with all types of different degrees of success. Some have hit it really, really well, and some miss the mark. And usually that's a question of authenticity. Are the people making the movie authentically gamer friendly, or are they just seeing a niche in the market and they're trying to make money? And gamers know, so we speak with our wallets, and the ones that do well are usually pretty good, and the ones that don't are usually pretty bad. Gamers are quick to turn a game off. Remember, there's a term, rage quit. It exists for a reason. So we may be harsh critics, but we're very honest critics as far as, are we being entertained? We may not understand, or we could understand completely, but it's a question of, are we being entertained? And the fact that video games like Ghost of Tsushima have this much content, this much story, this much beautiful betrayal and tragedy, I promise you, if you enjoyed Red Dead Redemption, if you enjoyed Red Dead Redemption 2, the story is beautiful, compelling. It'll make you want to finish the game. If you don't want to do side missions, you don't have to. There's a linear story that you can go straight through, and it's beautiful. Again, I can't recommend enough. Kurosawa mode with Japanese voiceover and English subtitles. It's my favorite way to play the game. I played it both now. If you have to have color, please do it. Some of the photos you guys send me on social media are so beautiful. It looks like National Geographic photography. So thanks, and keep sending those. I'll always send you guys love whenever I see them. Next week, we will get into two completely different topics. But today, I hope you saw how the way of the samurai is also the way of the Mandalorian, because this is the way. So remember, arigato to everyone. If you want to say something cool in Japanese, you can say jane. That means like see you later. So that's what I'm going to say to you guys tonight when we log off, is a jane. So improve your language, improve your culture, embrace the Ghost of Tsushima, play it. Here's a Shinto shrine bow for you. Boom. If you play the game, you're going to see Lord Jin Sakai do that as well. So, until the next episode of GEGG Talk, I hope this makes you want to go on YouTube, search Akira Kurosawa, search Kenji Misumi, search the Seven Samurai, search the Magnificent Seven, search Hidden Fortress, search Lone Wolf and Cub, search all these movies and see the people who inspired the people that you love watching today. You'll see how these video games get made, how movies today get made, how all these TV shows get made. It's all from something that inspired them just a time before. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode. I'm Freddie Prinze Jr., wishing all of you a very good evening and good game. And, John, peace!